Good morning and welcome to my first video. This morning I'm going to show you how to make a PE bag. My daughter starts school and she was rather disappointed with the PE bags on offer in the local shops, and so we thought we would pop down to the nearest fabric store and make the PE bag. As you can see here, I've got some unicorn fabric. It's a bit of a thing for her at the moment, but you can choose anything that suits you. You know, you could go for something that might suit boys better. It needn't be a girl's PE bag. I've got some cord. This will be the string that pulls the PE bag across the top. You'll see a pair of scissors, a tape measure. There's a pin on the table, although it's not very visible. You'll need some thread that matches the fabric that you've bought, and a sewing machine. I've prepared my fabric already, which means I've washed it and I've ironed it once it was dry. This just means that once you've made your PE bag, should you wash it again, it shouldn't shrink. Okay, and I'll show you. Let's get started. Okay, now we're going to cut our fabric. What we're going to do is we're going to measure from the short distance here. We want 50 centimetres by 80 centimetres along. This will enable us to fold the fabric in half and only sew 2 seam edges. If you're short on fabric, you can cut 2 pieces of fabric of about 42 centimetres by 50 centimetres and sew 3 edges in order to put them together. I prefer to always buy a little bit of extra fabric, because I don't know if you can see this very well here, but this edge has not been cut particularly straight and this edge has been torn, which will mean that unless I measure this correctly and cut it relatively straight, I'm not going to get the overall effect that I'm looking for. So 50 centimetres. I would recommend that you always keep a pair of scissors specifically for your sewing if you're new to this. My family are known for using my scissors in the kitchen for cutting plastic, paper. All of these things will blunt your scissors and mean that you don't get that lovely crisp cut when you make your next project. The accuracy of this is not vitally important. If you are 1 or 2 centimetres short, you should still get a very nice PE bag. This is a great little project for learning some basic sewing skills and at least enables you to feel like you've achieved. So just to double check that this I've cut relatively straight, I'm going to fold it in half. I don't know whether you can see here, this proves that I've cut a rather wonky line. I'm just going to go about straightening that back up. It is advisable that you don't include these edges within your project making, because there's nothing more disappointing than getting to the end of a project and discovering that somehow this edge, called the self edge, has made up part of your project and is then showing. So I will just cut that off in a second. And there we have it, relatively straight rectangle. Okay, now we're going to fold it in half. When we sew, we always sew pretty much looking at the back of the fabric, which means that when we turn the project inside out, we should get a lovely finish to the front. Okay, and now we're on to the sewing machine part. Now, from the top edge here, what we're going to do is measure down roughly 12 centimetres. This is going to give us the top of our bag in order that we can fold it over and put the cord through. So measuring from about 12 centimetres, I'm going to put the foot down, and I would always recommend that you leave yourself an edge of about 1.5 centimetres. Normally here on the silver plate you'll find a number of markings. I choose, depending on the project, which marking I intend to use, and try to follow that as the project goes straight through the machine. When we start, I'm going to do 2 or 3 stitches forwards, 2 or 3 stitches back, and then I'm going to run all the way to the bottom. Okay, here we go. You should catch hold of, I'm sure most of you are very aware of this, the threads from underneath and the top in order that they don't get sucked back into the machine. This can give you puckering and ultimately not very nice finish. When we come to the end again, we're going to do those few stitches forwards, 3 or 4 backwards, and 3 or 4 forwards again. This just finishes off the end and should help prevent the stitches from coming undone. Sometimes you do need to be careful this close to the edge that somehow the sewing machine doesn't pull itself a bit wonky, because this can again cause puckering. I have been asked why we don't just turn the fabric round and continue with the corner, which you can do, but this is going to create a weakness in one of the corners of your PE bag, and knowing how children can be, could result in it becoming particularly worn or with a hole in it quite quickly. So I'm going to cut those threads off, leaving myself some relatively long ends, and then we're going to sew again along this edge. Oh, I have forgotten to go backwards and forwards. I'm hoping that's not going to cause me too many problems. I will now need to tie those ends off. There we go. This now has given us both edges sewn. Okay, now the next part of the project is we've got the opening here at the top, and what we want to do is fold these edges down in line with the seam. This is going to help enable us to have a really nice finished edge for the cord to come out of. So we're going to fold these edges over, carefully thread it through the sewing machine and just stitch those edges down. And we're going to do that to both sides. You need to be careful not to get them all tucked up underneath each other, otherwise you're not going to get a very nice finish. So here we go. As simple as that for the first one, and then the same for the second one. I do prefer to run the edge of my work so that all the fabric is this side, because when I stuff it through this side, I can't necessarily lay the bits that I want to lay flat and see exactly what I'm doing. Also, you can line the edge of your fabric up again against some of these lines here, or in this situation, the edge of the foot. Okay. So, excuse the few threads, we can always cut those off. And there we have it, 2 edges folded down. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is turn the project inside out and iron it. Some people miss the ironing it phase. I have always been taught that the ironing process is really important because it enables you to have nice flat fabric and therefore nice flat finishes of seams. There are 2 ways you could do this. You can fold it inside out and iron it flat, or the other option, if you are quite meticulous, is to fold the seams outwards first on the inside and then turn the PE bag out the other way. This is just a children's PE bag. I'm only hoping for this to last a year, especially with it being unicorn fabric. I'm sure next year it will be something else. So yeah, over to the iron. The iron is also as best friend. Okay, and so as you can see, we've ironed this. I didn't show you the ironing bit. I think that's rather boring. So yes, we still have a raw, as it would be described, a raw top edge, and this that folds outwards. So the next point is, if we turn it back inside out, we now need to make the tubing piece that will go at the top in order to keep the cord in for the pull string along the top. So what we need to achieve here is we could just fold it down. This raw edge is going to be on the inside. I don't know how long that's going to last. So what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to fold that under. I like to sew this down just because it makes the rest of the project so much easier to do. So I'm going to fold over literally about 1 centimetre all the way round. And run that through the sewing machine, again using the edge of the foot as a guide for where my seam line will go. That seam done. Now, as you can see, the raw edge is folded under, which means now we can fold this edge over to where the opening begins. This is about, I don't know, maybe 4 centimetres. This will just make it easier to thread the cord through, and also the children will find that the cord will slide better through the bag. Because of the width as well, if you make it a very narrow channel, sometimes it can be more difficult to get the sort of scrunched up, tied up effect on the top of the bag. So this time we're going to fold it over, and as we go through, we're going to run the edge of this seam against the other side of the foot, all the way through round to the other side. I would also suggest that we go forwards 2 or 3 stitches, because that could be a weak point, and then again backwards 2 or 3 stitches, and off we go. Just keep lining it up as you go. And again, we're just going to go back a few stitches and through again. So, what we should now have, and if you pull out the loose ends and trim, what we should now have is this tube-like effect. Now, I have bought this cord. I liked it because it matched some of the colours in the unicorn. What they've done is, in order to cut the cord, they've sellotaped the end off. This stops it unravelling. Basically, I won't take that off until the very last minute after I've tied the knots, because it comes undone quite quickly. This is the point that you're going to need your safety pin. There are other pieces of equipment that you can use to assist in threading cords through various different channels. I've just always found that the safety pin works. So if you untwist it a little bit, it's probably best not to force it through the cord itself, but to slightly unravel the cord to get the needle through. So literally it's going to go in to the channel, and the safety pin just gives you something a bit more firm to hold on to and push through. Depending on the width of the channel for your cord will depend on how easy this is. Because I've got lovely wide channel here, this is going through beautifully. And the more times you do things like this, obviously the narrower the channel can get and the better the practice can be at it. You just do have to be careful, because obviously the end is taped, so not to pull too hard or too fast, because you don't want it all coming unravelled inside. You can't really at the moment see what's going on, so being a little bit more gentle does help. We're nearly there. There we go. There's my safety pin. I'm just going to slide it on. Okay, now I'm going to take the safety pin out. I have bought more cord than I needed. You do need to make sure with your cord that it's definitely long enough to go through the top of the PE bag, giving it the full length, and then however long you feel is necessary for it to come out the other side. With this size PE bag, although I've bought 1m30, I actually think that probably a metre would have been more than enough. This type of cord, depending on where you buy it, you can get it at a variety of different craft shops, fabric shops, textile shops. This was 50p a metre, which I think, considering the beautiful colour of it, is very worthwhile. So now all I'm going to do is tie a knot in the end. This will stop the cords from coming out, and put it really tight, and then also put both pieces. And then when you're sure it's as tight as it needs to be, you can cut off the sellotaped ends. As you can see there, I was talking about how quickly it unravels. You can see it's literally started. Some people, and I will do, like to take a lighter to all of these ends. Because of the high polyester or nylon content, what it will do is it will melt. Make sure, I normally would do this over the kitchen sink, just in case anything ever goes wrong, because then I can just turn the tap on and sort it all out again. So yeah, what we have now, if I turn it inside out, is one unicorn PE bag. I chose to use cheaper polyester fabric for this. My daughter goes through phases fairly quickly, so this fabric I think was about £3.50, maybe £4 a metre. I only had to buy half a metre for my project and a metre of the cord. I was fortunate enough that I had all the thread available to me, and it didn't use a lot of thread, so just taking the fabric and the cord into consideration, I've made this little project for less than £3, which was cheaper than I could buy a PE bag in my local shop. I hope you've enjoyed my first video. I've been a little bit nervous all the way through, so hopefully the next one I do I'll be a bit more relaxed, and we're planning the next project to be a cushion cover. I'm doing this because if one more person in my local shop tells me how difficult it is to put a zip into an object, and I have to explain the instructions one more time, I may well go crazy. Putting a zip into a project never needs to be difficult, and you can see how that's done in my next video. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe or like, and message me if you can think of any little projects that you'd like to see, to learn some basic steps and skills. Yeah, thanks.